Well, your Tennessee Vols are 7-1 and still controlling their own destiny, whether to play in a SEC championship game or to get into the college football playoffs. Tennessee did not play well in this game. This was very ugly in about every facet. You want to go over 3 missed field goals. Punting was not that good tonight. 3 dropped TDs. Fumble by Sampson down there, so he's got 2 fumbles in 2 games, and he never fumbled before that. But I will say they kind of ripped the ball out. It wasn't like he was mishandling it or carrying it loosely. But, man, we're just playing ugly football. But we did win. Let's stay positive here, and did beat Kentucky. This is a team that had nothing to lose, was playing with house money, and threw the kitchen sink at us, and they did make it interesting. So let's look at the stats here. Total yards. Tennessee had 477 total yards. Kentucky had 360 total yards. Passing yards. Tennessee had 292 passing yards. Kentucky had 192. Rushing yards. Kentucky had 168 rushing yards. That blows my mind. Kentucky really struggled at running the football coming into this game. They were one of the worst in the SEC, and Tennessee was one of the best in the SEC as far as rush defense, but one of the best in the country. I think we were second nationally in rush defense. And Kentucky, give them credit. The dual threat quarterbacks that they had in the game, they kind of broke containment and they kind of made us pay. But I am a little disappointed that we allowed them to go north 150 yards rushing on us. And then on the other hand, we had 185 yards rushing. That's south of what we normally average as well. So Kentucky did a good job limiting us and making Nico beat them. And so now let's get the first downs. Kentucky had 19 first downs. Tennessee had 29. Third down efficiency. Now, Tennessee's defense did do good here. They limited Kentucky for 4 out of 14 on third down efficiency. That's really good. That's one thing this defense has done really, really well this year is third down efficiency. They're getting off the field on third down. Tennessee was 7 for 14. Fourth down efficiency, Kentucky was 0 for 2 on that. Tennessee was 1 for 1. Total plays. Tennessee had 18 more total plays than Kentucky, 82 to 64. Penalties. It was a ugly game. 77 yards with the penalties for us, 71 for Kentucky. Kentucky had 3 total turnovers. We had 1 turnover there with the Sampson fumble there close to the red zone. And then time of possession, Kentucky just had the ball roughly about 1 more minute than we did. And this is a Kentucky team that goes really, really slow when they have the ball on offense, so that doesn't surprise me. But we did have 18 total more plays. So let's look at players of the game. First guy I'm going to talk about, and his stats do not show really how good he played, and that is Nico Iamaleava. 292 yards, 1 TD. He should have had 4 TDs. Three dropped TD passes. Joshua Josephs is my other player of the game. He had 2 tackles. He had that strip sack that led to, I think, our first TD of the game. Miles Kitselman, even though he did drop 1 TD, he still had 97 yards and 1 TD. I think Miles Kitselman's had a really good season for us so far. If you're a tight end and you want the ball to come to you a lot, come to Tennessee. We have gotten the ball to Kitselman and Stays a lot this year. Dylan Sampson is the other player of the game. I know, surprise on that. He had 142 yards, 2 TDs, and he breaks almost a 100-year record by G. McKever in 1929. So, that comes very rarely, and you have to give props to Dylan Sampson for going out and doing that. And he has just had a great, great season. So let's get to the Week 10 SEC Power Rankings, and let's go from last to first, and let's talk about the first team on this list at number 16, and that is Mississippi State. They did beat UMass 45-20. And got their second win of the season. They do got to play a top 10 Tennessee team on the road next week, and so it doesn't look good for them on that. But they do host Missouri in a couple weeks, and I think they can beat Missouri. Missouri's not playing very good, and Brady Cook which is their starting quarterback for Missouri. I don't think he'll be playing, so that is a winnable game for Mississippi State. They could get their third win there. It's been a kind of a nightmare season for Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby was really put into a situation where it was going to be hard for him to win football games with that roster and that schedule. And let's get to the next team on this list at number 15, Oklahoma. They beat Maine 59-14. They got their 5th win of the season. Now, if they can beat Missouri next week, they could actually get into a bowl game as bad as this season has been, which would be huge for Oklahoma, and it would be really big for their head coach to do, because 6 wins with really the way they played this year is kind of remarkable to me, because Oklahoma's played some really bad football this season. I think Oklahoma fans will tell you the same thing. So I think they could definitely go into Missouri and beat Missouri. I think they could definitely go into Missouri and beat them next week. So we'll see what happens. But if they don't get that win, they're definitely not going bowling, because I don't see them beating anybody else on their schedule. Number 14, Kentucky. They put up a valiant effort in Knoxville. I was really impressed with the way that Kentucky played in this game. They played really, really hard, and they rushed for over 168 yards against that stingy Tennessee defense. Kentucky's not going to go bowling this year. They don't have 3 wins, and they have to beat Texas and Louisville, and they're not going to do that. I think they have Murray State next week, so they should get their 4th win there, but they're not beating Texas and Louisville. So Mark Stoops and Kentucky are going to be home for the holiday season. Number 13, Auburn. Oh, man, Auburn needed this game so badly at home, and they lost it. They lost it to Vandy 17-7. They won in the box score. They had more total yards and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, they were outscored 17-7, so they lose. Diego Pavia goes 3 for 3 against Auburn in his career. And, poor Auburn. Now they still have A&M and Bama on their schedule, too, so they're not going bowling either. They're going to be home as well. Number 12, Missouri. They were off this week. They play Oklahoma next week, and they need to win that game very badly. I don't know if Brady Cook's going to play. I doubt it. We'll see what happens there. Missouri's had a really letdown year. I was big on Missouri. I thought they were going to be a lot better this year with the returning quarterback, returning receivers, but they have disappointed. And Missouri had a great year last year, but not this year. Number 11, Florida, lost to Georgia 34-20. They did cover that 14.5-point spread barely. It's really unfortunate for Florida, because if DJ Lagway doesn't go down in that game, Florida may have won that game. They had to play their 3rd-string quarterback, who was like a walk-on from an Ivy League school, and you're just not going to beat Georgia with the 3rd-string Ivy League QB. So, but I will say Florida's playing much, much better. They're not a bad football team. They've had both their quarterbacks go down this season. They've had just a brutal schedule. And I do think Florida's getting better every week. Hopefully they can get DJ Lagway back. Number 10, Arkansas. Just absolutely got beat like a drum against Ole Miss. Gave up almost 700 yards of total offense and allowed Ole Miss's Jordan Watkins to have over 254 yards of receiving and 5 TDs. Arkansas, man, that was just an ugly, ugly game. It still blows my mind that Tennessee lost to this Arkansas team. Just a horrible loss for my Tennessee Vols, and it's not looking better every week that the season goes on. Now, number 9, I never thought in the preseason I would be saying this, but I had Vandy as the worst team in the SEC. Well, they're not the worst team in the SEC this year. I got them at number 9 in my power rankings. But Vandy is bowl eligible for the first time since 2018. And let me tell you, Tennessee has to go down there at the end of the year in Nashville. And that is going to be a very, very hard game for Tennessee to win. Vandy has 3 winnable games, but there are also games they can lose as well. They got to play South Carolina, LSU, and Tennessee. And if they can win one of those games, they could have 7 wins on the season. Vanderbilt is not a flashy team. They're not a great team, but, man, they do not beat themselves. You have to go out there and beat them, and they're a very disciplined football team. Number 8, South Carolina. Outside of Vandy, South Carolina is my most, they're the team that surprised me the most. I didn't think South Carolina was going to be that good this year, and then the defense showed me how good they were. But anyway, they beat A&M 44-20. I had actually A&M winning this game, but, man, South Carolina proved me wrong. South Carolina was impressive in all phases, defensively, offensively. This South Carolina team is a top 25 team. period. I'm very impressed with South Carolina. I cannot believe that they rushed for, they rushed for either close to 300 yards. I think they rushed for close to 300 yards rushing on that A&M defense. And you're going to beat a lot of teams doing that. But Lenore Sellers, he looked amazing at quarterback. He just looked so comfortable back there. And South Carolina is going to be a hard out for anybody to beat because that defense can get after you. Lenore Sellers is playing better. The receivers are playing better. South Carolina's a good football team. All right, number 7, LSU. They were off this week, but they got Bama next week. And this is an elimination game. The loser of this game's out. So it's a huge, huge game. LSU has to have it, but I got them at number 7. Number 6, Alabama. They're off this week as well. They got LSU. They got to go to Death Valley. Now, Alabama's schedule to me is much more manageable than LSU's is. If Alabama can win next week against LSU, I think they're going to be in the college football playoffs because that will mean they have had a win over LSU in Death Valley, and they've beaten Georgia this year. There's no way a 10-2 Bama team is going to be left out of the college football playoffs with those 2 wins. All right, so the 6 at Bama. Number 5, A&M. This got blasted by Carolina, which gave them their 2nd loss on the season. They've got no room for error going forward. And then they've got Texas coming to them at the very end of the year, so they can't lose any more games. Now, this is a good A&M football team, but, man, they ran into a buzzsaw last night in Columbia, South Carolina. But A&M can still get in the cup to the college football playoffs if they can win out on this schedule. Number 4, Tennessee. It was not a pretty win. It was not a pretty win, but it's a win nonetheless. Beat Kentucky 28-18. Tennessee missed 3 field goals. Allowed Kentucky to run for over 150 rushing yards, which Kentucky's a bad rushing football team. But the bright spot is Nico played extremely well. And his numbers would have been even more impressive if those receivers would not have dropped. They wouldn't have dropped the 3 TDs that he threw them. They 3 drop TD passes by the Tennessee wide receivers. Dylan Sampson had a fumble too down in the red zone. So this team, we should have beat Kentucky by much more than what the scoreboard shows. But you know, we didn't get the job done. But we did win the game, but we played very sloppy. Number 3, Texas. They're off this week, but they host Florida next week. I don't think DJ Lagway is going to be able to play in that game. If he is able to play, though, I could definitely see Florida giving them a game. But Texas should be okay next week. They still got A&M, and they've got a couple other games on their schedule this year. So, you know, Texas needs to stay sharp and crisp if they want to get into the college football playoffs as well. Oh, Texas is finding out that schedule in the SEC is a lot harder than the Big 12 schedule that they've had in years past. You know, it's a grind in the SEC. It's tough every single week, every team you play. Number 2 is Ole Miss. This might be the best team in the SEC right now. Offensively, defensively, they are just well put together. Defensively, they can get after the quarterback. They can stop the run. I think Ole Miss is the number 1 rush defense in the country right now. They got Georgia next week. So if they can beat Georgia, they still have to go to Florida at the end of the year. But if they can beat Georgia, I think they're going to get into the college football playoffs. But that's going to be a lot easier said than done, beating Georgia, right? So we'll see what happens. But I do love the way that Ole Miss is playing right now. You know, Jackson Dart had an amazing game last game. Receivers, Watkins, he had over 250 yards receiving. So if they can keep playing like that, they can definitely beat Georgia next week. And number 1, I still have Georgia. They struggled at times against Florida, but they still got the job done. The one thing that Georgia's going to have to answer, though, is what is wrong with Carson Beck? What is he doing? 3 interceptions. That's the 2nd game in a row that he's had 3 interceptions in a game. They've got to play better offensively if they're wanting to win some of these big games, and they got to be more consistent. Still, they did run the ball a little bit better. ETN went out, and then I can't think of the running back that came in, but I thought he did a really good job, so they did run the ball better. But Georgia's got to be better offensively if they want to win the SEC championship or win or do any damage in the college football playoffs. But anyway, that is my Tennessee recap. That is my SEC Power Rankings for Week 10. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great week.